Alright, finishing up on a series of response videos to the Hopelessly Silly Hythloday. Made 3 videos. I've watched pieces of them, but they're all rubbish. It's hard to even put a context on this. I've sort of, in our live conversations, I mean, you make an argument. You say, look, for the sake of argument, this is my theory. So here are my premises. This is what I believe and why I believe it. Now, the obligation is to somehow poke holes in this theory, explain why this theory is incorrect. And he just, that's not what he understands the obligation to be. And then you say, okay, the second round, let's do it to your theory. So what's your theory? People have this thing, what's the magic word? Agency. Yeah, they have this thing called agency. And now he's turning that into some kind of free will debate. It's not even about whether it's free or not. Who cares where the agency comes from? The argument being made is what does agency mean? You have an opinion? It doesn't have to be a qualified opinion. It doesn't have to be grounded in some sort of reality. So, I mean, if some wacky Muslim says this is, my theory, I have to respect it, even if it makes absolutely no sense at all. But I don't have to respect when a cow goes moo in a way where I know it's saying, don't do that. That agency is irrelevant. The agency of the animal expressing its non-desire to be thrown in a cage and tortured, that agent is not a relevant agent, and somehow a Muslim with an idiotic theory is a relevant agent because of genetics. And then you put it as clearly as you can put it. Doesn't this create huge double standards, this arbitrary standard of yours? Humans matter, everything else doesn't. And even if I was to concede your argument that only humans matter and only humans are conscious, you're still violating the fundamental rules in the sense that you still haven't explained where you get the authority to decide for somebody else that you will impose circumstances on them. You're committing the first imposition crime. You can't create something and not be imposing on it. If we can't start from that premise that you can't create something without imposing on it, we haven't got a conversation. I said that more than once. There's no real way we can have a conversation because you just won't accept reality. And it's just factual reality that creating people, making people, is doing something in the world that's rather aggressive. Sorry, it just is. And if you can't see that, you're too stupid for me to have a conversation with. You just are. So anyway, you're too stupid for me to have a conversation with. I should have known that from the beginning. But it doesn't really matter. So this video, I did some jibber jabbering, and so I figured there was some point in it, so I marked down the time, so somewhere around this time. So we'll play some of this and see. But it's clearly he just doesn't understand the what's being argued and how it's being argued. He just doesn't get it.
With regard to value, implying that there are oughts, well, that's...
Yeah, I don't know how you could possibly do value math. Value implies gravity, weight. It's mathematical. The word value is a mathematical term. And how that doesn't imply ought. Ought is plus numbers, minus numbers. There's ought written all over your outcome. So yeah, results are positive or negative. They're above a standard or below a standard. And to apply a standard is just sensible. And so yeah, the ought is built into the minute you're doing math. So if you're a nihilist and you don't believe there's value, fine. You don't believe there's a negative. You don't believe there's a difference between having brain tumor and eating a biscuit and enjoying it, then yeah, I don't have a conversation for you. There's absolutely no evidence of my entire life experience indicates to me that those are the same thing. That it doesn't matter whether I'm suffering horribly or I'm in pleasure. It matters incredibly. There's a huge difference. So I can't have conversation with silly people. And I'm sorry, you're silly. It's like having a physics conversation with somebody who doesn't accept the existence of gravity. Just silly.
It's an interesting question, and you've got a long way to go and a lot of intellectual work to do to demonstrate that.
Like I said, I don't have any more work to do. There's nothing. I can't help you, right? There's no way a non-sentient, okay, could ever understand sentience through words. There just isn't. Okay, you don't feel. Okay, amazing to me that you want to kill yourself because you don't feel. Amazing to me that you don't seem to understand the difference between being in horrible pain, sciatica or something, and feeling good. And you can't tell the difference between those things. It seems amazing to me, but it seems like a preposterous lie, actually. It doesn't seem like that's the truth at all. You were complaining about the noise in the hallway at the hospital. Somehow that was not a good condition to be in, because you were sleep deprived. But somehow you're saying to me it's okay. You being sleep deprived is just as good as you being comfortably in a nice soft bed with soft music playing. That those two things are exactly the same. That they have no value difference. It doesn't matter if forever and ever I tormented you on a gurney in a noisy room, or you were in a happy, comfortable condition. That those two universes, one where you're doing one for the eternity and one where you're doing the other for eternity, are exactly equal. It just doesn't matter. If I have the ability to choose, I might as well just flip a coin. You're saying a rational, logical organism should see no distinction. And I'm supposed to believe you? So what work do I have to do to demonstrate that suffering sucks and that happiness and comfort is good? What work? I don't have any work to do. Anybody who's sentient is going to understand those distinctions. So to tell me I have work to do? What work do I have to do? That has nothing to do with the work I have to do. The work I have to do is to get people to understand being a selfish cunt and being a good game player. That's the work. The work is to get the people to understand it's the game that matters, not the individual players. That's the work.
Especially omitting the fact that we have no free will. Because if we have no free will, then we are not really performing any valuations.
Well, of course we are, and the valuations we perform will be changed by how our will is changed through communication. So again, the free will is irrelevant to the subject. The subject is what's going to rule our behavior. Logic and sensible, fair evaluations are perversions of our addiction and attachment. That we should personally, emotively react and say, no, I'd rather the math look like this, so I'm going to pretend this is how it looks. I'm going to change the values. I'm going to take the negative stuff and hide it, and then I'm going to elevate the positive stuff because I'm addicted. And I'm going to try to make a rationalization for my addiction. That's the issue.
There isn't even any value, would be the point.
There isn't any value, that would be the point. I'm sorry. Okay, like I said, I can't... there's no argument I can make. You want to say nihilistically that it doesn't matter? Then I suggest, instead of killing yourself by overdosing on aspirin, maybe you should go feed yourself to a crocodile. Why don't you go to the zoo and just jump in the lion cage if it doesn't matter how you die? If suffering doesn't matter. Crazy fuck.
Moreover, any implied ought from a particular valuation system or value that a particular person
yeah, implied oughts are like, you have to have a standard. The nuclear power plants have to meet a standard of performance. If they kill too many people or poison the environment too much, well, yeah, don't build that one again. Yeah, those are the standards. The standards for our performance are going to be how much suffering did we cause in the world and how much did we relieve. And I made that clear. You've got to understand that by now. That's a simple evaluation based on the completely consistent with every natural function of every naturally sentient organism on this planet. And your counter argument is computers that say ouch are suffering. And I'm supposed to say that's a credible theory? That's all that sentience is a computer saying ouch? That our biological capacity to sense sensations is no different than? That's your theory. I can see a difference. I can know a difference. I can know me thinking about the word ouch and me feeling ouch are two different things. Very different things.
These requires intellectual work to extrapolate that beyond a descriptive state that they're in, to extrapolate it beyond to other individuals.
Well, again, you say this is a truth, and I'm saying you haven't. That argument doesn't mean absolutely anything to me. I'm sorry. I see sentient life forms on Earth. I see them being tortured, and I'm recognizing the negative value of that. Your counter argument is value doesn't exist. Well, again, we have nowhere to start from here. It's not a rational starting point from my perspective. My personal experience with sensation tells me that's a crock of shit. And there's absolutely no way you're going to convince me, okay, that pain is the same thing as pleasure. You're just not.
To say that there is an art that exists for me, that I must abide to that valuation.
You must abide to logic, and I said for the sake of the argument, let's concede that suffering is the source of value. You agreed to do that for the sake of the argument, and then you changed your mind in the middle of the debate and said, no, I'm going to argue that there's no value. Well, that's not going to work. I'm asking you to tell me how my logic is flawed. Okay, my premise is that value is real. Sensations are real, they're real events, and they have real weight as value. And now you tell me how I'm wrong. You can't tell me that my personal experience with sensation is wrong, so that's not going to work. You can't show it to me in anywhere on planet Earth where it seems obvious that the sensitive organisms are not having sensation experiences. So how exactly are you going to convince me that sensations don't matter? That it's okay to torture things because it just doesn't matter? You're not. I'm just saying we have no place to go. You can't undo this. There's no way you can make me as stupid as you. It just can't happen. I can't ever get stupid enough to think it doesn't matter if Jews are in concentration camps. That it's just as good as Jews eating hafala or something, or kadafels. No, it's not just as good. You're insane. Okay, you've been misdiagnosed, okay? You're not spaghetti head or whatever you call it. What do they call that? That silly new autism. Yeah, well anyway, you're not that. You're not Aspergered, okay? You're a sociopath, okay? So maybe you should go to your doctors and say, look, give me the sociopath test, because I think I'm going to pass that one.
This necessitates that you come up with a credible theory of valuation ahead of time.
Yeah, right, I already did that. I premised the argument with it, and you agreed to those premises. But you really didn't. What you were when I said value's real, and I believe I'm discovering it in the world, you said fine, but what you were really just saying is you're entitled to think that. Okay, you didn't accept it as a premise. So there's just no point.
Using reason. This is something you don't do. This is something you don't do when you, for example, in my last video, when you value purposes and place valuations upon the absence of purposes.
Yeah, well, purpose is, let's understand, this is another thing he doesn't get. I don't mean purposes in like, I went to the store, so I rode a bicycle, so riding the bicycle was for the purpose to get to the store. When I was discussing this, it was clear what I was talking about. I'm talking about an accomplishment that justifies the losses. So if you're going to incur a loss, you have to have a compensating value. And my argument is that by itself, life has no compensating function. It doesn't heal a wound. It's not medicine for the universe. It doesn't make the universe comfortable. It doesn't do anything to fix something that's broken. So let's just understand, the universe isn't sitting there broken and life fixes it. Okay, so it can't say, I'm good because I eliminated harm. Life can't say that. So life has to be good in and of itself. In and of itself, it has to create a redemption. And what I'm saying is, no such luck.
If we can't agree that there is a performance standard.
You see, Gary, you're operating at an entirely different level, philosophically speaking. You're operating essentially at a baser level, a superficial level.
Okay, so it's superficial to expect performance. Does that make sense to anybody? Can to be serious, quink, all these do in the morning, you think that's a rational statement. Performance standards are superficial intellectually. And smart people shouldn't have performance standards. Isn't that the very nature of intelligence, is to be able to tell the difference between failure and success? What?
Yeah, you can't in the one breath be talking about how we're pointless replicating machines with no purpose, no valuable purpose, and then want to use the vocabulary as though we have purpose.
There we go. Again, I'm not doing that. So you clearly can't follow along. What I clearly am saying is, we know the box. We're talking about this box, this thing. We know the thing has no value external to the world. We know it doesn't do anything out there of any purpose. The question is, does it do anything internally of purpose or function? Because it can't look to the universe for an excuse for itself. It can't claim, I'm a cure, therefore I can be expensive. You don't understand that?
It's flip-flopping between the issues.
Well, that's just nonsense. It's just another one of your unfounded, reckless, sloppy, ignorant accusations that you don't defend, that are nonsensical. I'm not mixing anything. I'm saying this thing, okay, this stationary bicycle has no value to the universe. Does it have value to anything else? That's the question.
You can't assert that there be standards and values without, at a deep level, discussing the underpinnings of those value systems.
I don't know. See, does that make any... the underpinnings of the value systems is that we are evolved creatures, that we have incidentally fell upon the existence of the creation of real value. Because of the necessity of thinking machines, which is a good thing to be if you're a robot running through the world, is to have a thinking device. Because that device needs some kind of synthetic value to function, as we know in computers, we have to create the synthetic value, which is their programming. When nature built the brain, it accidentally made real value. It's not synthetic. It created real whip and carrot, the real blood, the real the real deal. That's the incidental consequence. To create a feeling machine, a thinking machine, you have to create a feeling machine. And like I said, you can do it synthetically. The synthetic feelings would be the programming that says what's your time directive, what's your function. Computers have that. We give them a motivation through programming. But nature fell on real value. It fell on torture.
That there are outcomes that are better outcomes and outcomes that are lesser outcomes.
This might be true, but...
This might be true. You know, it might be true. I mean, you can't even concede that that yes is true.
It's entirely arbitrary.
And there we go. It's entirely arbitrary. Torture's arbitrary. We can't tell the difference between torture and comfort. It's arbitrary. It's an arbitrary distinction. Sentient organism suffering, sentient organism relaxing, completely arbitrary distinction between those two things. Is that a starting ground for any of you people? I mean, why don't you just join the sociopath club? Because I don't know how that can be a starting point for a rational description of our reality. You're going to say that's a rational way to describe reality on planet Earth. That whatever sentient beings are feeling, it doesn't matter. Torture as many as you want because it doesn't matter. And then you're going to waste people's time talking about ethics. Like you think there is such a thing. How the fuck could you possibly have ethics when you can't accept that the value is generated by an engine of some kind? If the welfare of sentient beings is not the origin of the value, then what the fuck possibly could be? Human ambition? That's it? You're so fucking insane.
And where it's not arbitrary, it's dependent upon the purpose that we set.
Okay,
Yeah?
so he's again saying that torture is, if it's not arbitrary, it just depends on whether you think it's bad or not. It doesn't have any reality. You can just be fooled and say, oh, I care. But you're just being a silly person. But go ahead, it's okay, you can do that. But as soon as you become a silly person and you say, I care, well, now it has value. So when the witness to the rape shows up to go, ooh, that's horrible, now the rape means something. It doesn't mean anything when the victim's screaming. Doesn't mean anything when she's feeling the pain. It means something because some witness showed up to go, gee, that's just horrible. And I'm supposed to say that makes logical sense? That is an accurate description of reality? That without human witnesses to go, ooh, that's smelly, it doesn't smell? I mean, these are direct questions. They really are. They might sound rhetorical because they're so, like, yeah, the obvious answer seems so obvious. But go ahead. Let me hear your response. What's your response? I'm supposed to believe that? I'm supposed to believe the victim isn't a victim until some human shows up to say she's a victim. And that's the catch-22, right? That no animal could ever be the victim because then the animal could not have an opinion that you're going to evaluate, that you're going to say is valuable. It's not allowed to opine because it can't speak English. I mean, fuck. You really are just too fucking stupid.
Something is
and insane, of course.
deemed successful in meeting an end, but you refute the idea that there be an end to meet, a worthy end.
Where do I refute that? I say the ends to meet is your net effect. That's the ends. You either had a net effect that created more suffering or a net effect that ameliorated or compensated for suffering. You created some sort of comfort or joy in such volumes that it compensated for any suffering that you caused. You either created good by eliminating bad or by creating some kind of good, whatever that would be.
You impress upon us your value system about pain and suffering. You impress upon us your value system about what worthy purposes are, without even realizing that you are doing such.
doing such. Okay, now really, did that mean anything? Was that? Yeah, I'm explaining my theory and asking you to explain how my theory is wrong or irrational or illogical, and you're not doing that. Now, I won't play it again, but that was really strange. Well, let's do it again. All right, so I don't. It always ends up going back further than you want to.
About pain and suffering, you impress us upon us your value system about what worthy purposes are, without even realizing that you are doing such.
So again, I'm asking you. You either accept the premises, or we are mortal enemies. Yeah, that's sort of the game, right? You either value suffering, or you're got to be my enemy, because yeah, that one's not negotiable. I'm telling you quite overtly, we're never going to agree. I'm never going to concede that you have a right to ignore suffering. Ever. Ever. That you have a right to spill it, spoil it, waste it, disregard it. I will never, ever, 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 ever agree you have a right to do that. Ever. Ever. So I'm saying we have no conversation. If you think you have a right to waste somebody else's suffering, we are enemies. You are a menace, in my view. You are evil. Do you understand now?
That there is the need to offer argument and support. But
again, I can't argue and support something to a sociopath who doesn't understand it. I can't explain to a sociopath that can't understand that other things feel, and that their feelings are vitally important, and that if you waste their suffering, it matters. I can't explain it to you. I'm sorry that you don't understand. I'm sorry that you're not sentient, and you don't know what pain is, and you don't know how bad it is. I'm sorry for you, but I have no help for you. I can't synthesize it into words. You have to feel a nut crunch to know what a nut crunch is. It's really, really pretty much impossible for me to explain it to you.
this foundational level of operating within philosophy, you don't even understand that these are the questions at issue that must be...
You've said that, so I'll mock you, because you mocked me for saying, I'm just saying. You keep saying the questions at issue. These are the questions at issue. What questions at issue? You don't believe suffering exists. You don't believe suffering is real in the world. You don't believe suffering matters. I got that. I'm saying that's a non-starter for me. Okay, so we're going nowhere. I have personal evidence that's just so fucking real, so fucking weighty. There's no way you're going to convince me my sentience doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I'm suffering. I got a piano on my balls or, you know, Sharon Stone on my balls. I know the difference, fuckface. And you're insane if you think you're going to convince me that pianos are just as good. You're fucking insane.
Rest. You think repeating yourself
Yeah, well, you keep repeating yourself, right? So if I counted how many times you said, the question at issue, the question at issue, the question at issue, the question at issue. You want me to count how many? You want me to just make a video of you saying it about... Well, it's got to be over 100 times in the last 10 videos. So should I do that, asshole, and just mock you? Okay.
in 1,000 different metaphorical ways.
Metaphorical ways, yeah, metaphors that you haven't explained, not one time, not one bit of argumentation. So explain how gladiator war, gladiator, okay, the gladiator spectacle isn't applicably, sensibly, logically a good metaphor, a good analogy to evolution. So go ahead, explain to me why it's not a sensible, accurate descriptor, that it doesn't parallel natural selection in almost every way. Toolkit-enabled fighters fighting for the victory of still standing up at the end. I mean, the only thing missing in Gladiator War is actually watching the gladiator fuck the bitch, right? Isn't that the only thing missing is the reproduction? What else is missing?
Counts, and it is vacuous to continue to operate at that level.
Okay, again, operate at what level? Sensible, reasonable metaphors used to describe the circumstance, and now we are left to try to explain why we all find Gladiator War unacceptable, and yet we find evolution acceptable. That's vacuous. No, I don't think so.
And not hear the criticisms which are laid upon.
You don't make any of those, liar. I mean, that's where you just lie. Where's your criticism? Where is it? I haven't seen one yet. Explain how it isn't a proper metaphor.
Your ideas.
And we are mapping possible futures, even though we know there's only one future, which is inevitable. But obviously,
This part, it just seems... Why is he even going here?
see from our perspective, before...
It's almost laughable. You're watching you clumsily grapple with the concepts of free will.
Oh, you know, this is just... There's no point, right? I mean, I don't really want to do this free will argument again, but I mean, it's just quite obvious that Martin Luther King couldn't just sit on the sofa and the world would have been the same. Obviously, we have to read a script. That's not being clumsy in describing the reality of our existence, that we will read a script. It's inevitable, but we have to read it. So it'd just be idiotic to say, oh yeah, the world will be just the same if I don't fight in the war. The war will come out just the same. Everybody could just say, the war, I don't need to actually go fight the war, do I? We're going to win, right? Yeah, so I'll just sit home. Everybody could say that, and you're still going to win the war. Uh-huh.
And how you placate your own ideas with this nonsense.
Oh, okay, that's enough. Yeah, I mean, really. No, fuck you. You're an idiot, and I will gladly humiliate you whenever you say anything about anything relevant. But go ahead, just keep talking about your Kantian Christian ethics. Even Kant conceded without God, his nonsense means nothing. So you're just a religious imbecile who's accepted some traditional notions that humans have dominion over the earth, and whatever humans want is okay, and they're free to take whatever they can take anytime they want to take it, and as long as they have a mob, they win. Yeah, well, fuck you. You're an idiot. You know, go buy the book Final Exit, okay? Because you obviously don't know how to do it. It's not a great guide, but, you know, anything's better than your failures, and succeed for a change. Because, yeah, you really are a piece of garbage. You're a lying piece of scumbag shit, and I can't, there's nothing else to say. Okay, go hang out with your buddy Quinca. Who's claiming what? You didn't call the cops? Well, gee, you haven't answered. There's a couple of people. I don't want to get other people involved, but I mean, I have it from 2 witnesses at conversations where we didn't deny it. So that doesn't really make sense, does it? You didn't deny it in conversations with people, and yet you claim you didn't do it? Huh? Interesting. Well, anyway, I'm not bothering with you. You're obviously a motherfucking internet terrorist. We know what you did to Fred. So there's really no conversation, is there? Nobody should have conversation with you. Nobody should be saying anything but, God, that's a scary motherfucker. Yeah. I mean, goddamn. So yeah, go hang out with the terrorists, fuckhead. And, of course, the skankiest of the cunts. And enjoy yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Until you're, you know, until you find a way out. Didn't even finish the job, right? So he has such respect for people's right to procreate, and he won't even hang around to finish the job. Amazing. That's how much sense of responsibility he feels. See, he doesn't know what the word responsibility is. He's talking about ethics and honor codes and all this other kind of crap, and he won't even hang around to finish a job he started. He makes a mess, and he just won't even hang around for somebody to say, gee, could you clean up a little of that? Fucking asshole. Turns the oven on, you know, and walks out of the house. Son of a bitch.